Ghana. You tuned into News Magazine with me, Irbad Ibrahim, and today, as usual, we have a cocktail of interesting issues for you in the area of education. You just can't afford to miss this. Over the week, there has been a lot of discussion about budgetary allocation to various sectors. We'll do a critical analysis of how much the taxpayer will pay for in the area of education with Dr. Ebenezer Ashley, who is a financial analyst. But before then, we'll go for our trending news, and Abena Safo helps us with that. Abena, you're welcome. How are you?
Thank you.
I hope the weekend was good. I'm superb.
Well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyway, good morning once again, and welcome to a new week. Okay, so we go straight to our trending news for today. The NDC elects new national executives.
You know, they said the electoral college was about 9,000, and by some estimates, if you add, you know, former government appointees and others, and that came up to 13,000. So it went through, you know, Saturday, and then most of Sunday itself, we only got, you know, certified results this morning. So it was quite a Herculean task for the major opposition party to elect a fresh set of national leaders. Some are saying surprises were pulled. Others also said no, everybody knew that person A or person B would be elected. Even though all the positions are important, there are three key positions. The position of the national chair. Some thought it should have gone to the Volta region, but Ofosu Ampofo won it.
Oh, okay.
And then again, the position of General Secretary, of course, General Mosquito Asiedu Nketia maintained that position. Some thought Kokwani Idowu would have caused a little upset, but he had very few votes, a little over 1,600 out of 8,000 to 9,000. And then the position of national organizer went to Joshua Akamba. You remember the Unity Walks, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, was carrying out. One of the key architects was Joshua Akamba. So that might have given him a little advantage ahead of the others. And then a young and vibrant Sami Jemfi won the position of National Communications Officer. So we wait to see, when you juxtapose what the NDC has against what the MPP has, then it means that, of course, when Ampofo goes head-to-head with the owner of Daily Guide and Freddie Blay, then we will expect something interesting. John Boydo, the substantive secretary, will now go head-to-head with Asiedu Nketia. So interesting times ahead. Samia Uku, national organizer, relatively young. Joshua Akamba, national organizer, relatively young. So that makes it even more interesting to look at what happens in the year 2020. So we wish the NDC and the MPP and all political parties the very best. It is customary that 2 years before a major election, all the political parties will choose their national leaders. The MPP has, the NDC has just done that. So we are waiting for PNC, CPP, and then PPP, and then APC as well. Then we are good to go for election 2020.
Do you think with Asiedu Nketia, I mean, with his one, I think he might have won their hearts because they seem to like him so much. I mean, don't you think they could have elected
sometimes, you know, we are quite a conservative nation. Some think you don't need to change a winning team.
Okay.
You know, the NDC was in opposition from 2001 to 2008. And it was Asiedu Nketia who was General Secretary when they won. But then the chairman at that time was Kobna Eje. But in 2014, they removed him and brought Portofi. And so by some popular acclamation, Asiedu Nketia is a trusted hand. And therefore going into 2020, which is going to be a critical election, it also has to do with the survival of a certain generation of political actors within the NDC. Certainly, if Mahama doesn't win in 2020, many people will fall off. Because there would be the need for a new breed of leaders in 2024. So therefore, this is very important. And to keep clinging to the straw, don't bring in too many new faces, stick to the old guns.
Anyway, away from that, BOG not taking over Ideal Finance, disregard false stories management.
Seven substantive banks have suffered mergers and closures or takeovers. UT, Capital Bank, suffering takeovers and then mergers in the case of Royal Bank, Beige, and a couple of others. So there is panic in the atmosphere vis-a-vis the financial and insurance sector. And very soon, you know, small, you know, microfinance companies. Ideal is not a substantive bank. So it's a microfinance company. So therefore, the management of the institution are saying that people should disregard any rumor that their outfit has been taken over by the Bank of Ghana. And there are panic withdrawals. It's like giving your money to one person and all of you want to take your money at the same time. Certainly there's going to be a stress and strain on the resources of the bank. So therefore a few banks are suffering. But I believe we need to strengthen indigenous banks. EcoBank, Barclays, GT Bank, Access Bank, these are, you know, foreign banks and they are doing fairly well because the capital base needed for you to run a bank has been shot up from 120 million to 400 million. Not everybody will be able to meet that threshold. So therefore, we call on the authorities that day to strengthen indigenous banks so that Ghanaian businesses will thrive.
And I think it's not the matter of, I mean, having a lot of banks in the country, but banks with standards and banks that can, that can stand firmly.
There is a culture within this country. If Abina does it and is successful, I don't think of doing it in an innovative way. I copy verbatim what she does. So MTN communication centers started and everybody was doing them. And then they started scratch cards, everybody. Momo came, everybody. Even when you start selling wache, everybody will be selling wache. So for a very small country with a population ranging between 27 and 30 million, to have 36 banks, that is quite a saturation.
That means we don't really see the
that is quite a saturation.
Reason to brand ourselves, so we just try to copy blindly.
Yes, so if it must be done, it must be done well. Look at media houses. Only 15 years ago, there were only a few. But now you can count over 30. So therefore, we have that culture of, okay, for as long as they say it works, then I'll also invest in it. There's nothing wrong with that. Do your investment, but be a little innovative so that you stand, you know, apart from the pack. Yes.
Anyway, away from that, demolition of Judges Bangalows begins to pave way for building of the National Cathedral. This is from Peace FM.
This is also a very contentious story. Some don't understand why a struggling third world country like ours, even though religious, per our constitution, we are a secular state. We can't rule this nation by the doctrines of one religion, maybe Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, or Islam, because people come from divergent religious backgrounds. So we call ourselves a secular state. But underneath that secularism is a heightened level of religiosity. We, you know, defer everything to the supreme being, the divine God Almighty. So therefore, for important state buildings to be demolished, to pave way for a national cathedral, some are raising concerns. What would we be doing in the National Cathedral that the Accra International Conference Center cannot do? What will we be doing there that the National Theatre cannot do? What will we be doing there that the Independence Square cannot do? Aglo does its religious programs at the Black Star Square. So therefore, it's just like saying you need a huge cathedral in an airport. What do you want it for? So therefore, it's contentious. A few people like Kabila of the CPP have taken the issue up, and Kabila is actually contesting it in court. So we wait to see how things pan out.
Don't you think that is national, they're wasting national resources, because those bungalows have been set up with using huge amounts of money, and if they are to just be demolished within a twinkle of an eye to put up a national cathedral, don't you think resources is being wasted? Because I don't really see the sense.
The rich area is prime area. It is the CDB, Central Business, Central CBD of the country, and that is where government is. Apart from the Jubilee House, that is a little far away. We have Parliament House, we have Blue Gate, National Security, we have other places, Accra International Conference Center. Then not too far from that, we have the judiciary and all that. So therefore, for me, a national cathedral, maybe it could be the vision of His Excellency the President. We wait to see how versatile we can be as a country, so that beyond just prayer, we could use it for other things.
And apart from that, do you think it's going to fetch us any money?
No, a church is not a revenue-generating, enterprise. Unless maybe you would want to say, okay, if a huge church like Christo Asafo wants to do a program, then it can come rent the place. Okay. But why would you rent a national cathedral when the Accra International Conference Center is there, when the National Theatre is there, when the Independence Square is there? Look at the Passovers and crossovers we do. If you don't do them at the stadium, you do them at the Independence Square. Yeah. So an enclosed area cannot contain tens of thousands of people. But we can't blame His Excellency, we can't blame the government too much. Maybe there's a vision why they are doing this, and we'll wait to see.
But don't you think we need to know? Because if there is a vision, I mean, we put him there. And so I feel if something like that is coming up, we should know in order to, so at least we can also give in our support or something like that. But not to come out,
the issue has actually divided the nation.
Okay.
But we wait to see. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Yeah. And so when things commence in earnest, maybe there will be a reason to continue.
Okay. Moving forward, 36 communities to benefit from rural water sanitation project. That's from Graphic Online.
You are in Accra or Kumasi or Tamale, and you think Ghana is a sprawling developing country, but you go only 100 kilometers away from the center of a major city, and the squalor in which people live is only an eyesore. So therefore I believe basic amenities, portable drinking water, these are basic human rights for the good people of Ghana. So therefore 36 communities, we want to see more.
Away from that, today we're doing football. Are you a football fan?
Not too much, but I'm involved with football people now.
Oh, okay,
yes,
I see.
Yes.
Anyway, Ghana 2, Ethiopia 1. Jordan, are you hate Braze as Black Stars boost qualification chances?
There are two major incidents happening now. Unfortunately, we couldn't qualify for the World Cup. But then the African Cup of Nations is lurking in the background. So therefore, we are trying to see how we can qualify. It was 2-0.
Yeah, 2-0.
Yes, and then again, we are hosting the women's competition here. And Ghana, pummeled, the first team we played against. But Ghanaians, please go to the stadium. Maybe Free has to be reminding people on Atopreko that they should go to the stadium. You can see that the culture of going to the stadium since May 9 has dwindled significantly. So they should do more, publicity, and then also encourage the sports unions, supporters unions. Even though this is women's football, we need to be there in our numbers to give them the moral support so that the cup remains in Accra.
I know. Anyway, that's all for our trending news for today. I'll leave Irad. I'll be back shortly with some comments. You can't afford to miss the rest of the conversation. Please stay tuned. I'm Abena Safo.
Okay, Abena Safo just helped us with the trending news. When we come back, the budget was read by the finance minister. What portion of it covers education? We'll discuss that with Dr. Ebenezer Ashley. Those who can stay with us, who will be back shortly.
Do you want to enroll your ward in a school where quality basic education, discipline and moral upbringing is our hallmark? Then come to Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences Basic School. Great Asas, Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences has vacancies in preschool, lower and upper primary, JHS 1 and JHS 2, with spacious and ventilated classrooms. The school also has excellent boarding facilities for students from upper primary to JHS. Great Asas also has a well-stocked library, a school bus that picks your ward from home to school and back home, with adequate security measures to ensure your ward's safety. Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences Preschool has state-of-the-art learning materials to make learning fun for your ward. We also have the Cadet Corps and a cultural troupe to tap hidden talents in your ward. Locate Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences at Awoshi Last Stop, Accra. Great Asa!
Hello, lovely people of Africa. African Youth Time. It's the show, as I rightly said, that gives African youth the platform to have an up close with living legends who are helping build the continent.
The youth of Africa, they have a lot of potential.
What is killing Africans is our inability to discover and identify our potentials and what we can do for ourselves.
Nobody makes you a leader. You become a leader.
We are not poor. The resources in Congo alone can feed the whole Africa.
Assemble, please. This is from me to us. I call it Students' Guide. VK.
Sharing yoga tempile of a better on steady strike. See, love is sharing in the expense of good. Giving promises they don't even understand. Sooner than later, the unexpected happen in 9 months. They will be father and mother, which is a large job for hearing the news. His full praise cannot be traced. Hey, Christine is very sad. With her hands above the head, she cries, saying, "Have I known it's always a last, never joke with your education. I now know it's always the best to learn hard when you are in school. And I know it's always a last, never joke with your education. I now know it's always the best to learn hard when you are in school. And I ordinary Christ, no, me. I cannot ordinary math, no, friend, say, boy, you are your mom. Watch it, Jimmy, say, me, friend, I ordinary Christ, no, me. I cannot ordinary math, no, friend, say, boy, you are your mom. And I know it's always a last, never joke with your education. I now know it's always the best to learn hard when you are in school. And I know it's always a last, never joke with your education.
You're welcome back. You are still tuned into News Magazine, and today we are discussing how much you, the taxpayer, are pumping into education. And to help us do the discussion, we have Dr. Ebenezer Ashley. He's an economist and a financial analyst. Doc, good to have you again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. You've had the opportunity to look at the budget. It was eloquently presented by a very calm finance minister as usual, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta. What quantum of the budget covers education, and are we spending enough on it?
Thank you very much. First, I will say good morning to our cherished viewers. If you look at the education, I've mentioned time and again that the whole country has various sectors, but there are some that dominate in terms of funding and because of prioritization of our needs. Currently, the education sector comes in very handy,
Sir.
and therefore it is no surprising to hear about it. As the minister rightly mentioned, the expectation is that in the next 1 year, the investment in monetary terms in the education sector would be more than has ever been witnessed in the country in a single year over the past 50 years. Now, the expectation is that we will get the necessary funding to make this not a mirage, but a reality. That is what matters. Now, the various activities in the education sector, as envisaged in the coming year, speak volume of the amount of money that would be injected into that particular sector. If you set the free senior high school program aside, you realize there are quite a number of activities. The various universities receive some amount of subvention or subsidy from the government. You also have the nursing and then the teacher training colleges of education also coming up, you know, and then we have the basic schools as well. So if you look at the various strata of the education sector, you realize there are quite a number of activities to be attended to in the coming year. And therefore, the amount of money, it might not even be as expected, but then it is near expectation, and that is very good. So the vote of funds or the allocation of funds to the education sector, given the number of challenges we have, we can say it's a good start. Now, in the course of the year, there may be room for additions.
Okay.
As well.
And then there will be a mid-year review pretty shortly, a few months down the line. Apart from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, National Security, the local government, and the agric government, and also the Health Ministry, the Education Ministry consumes a chunk of this country's GDP. So are you surprised that despite that commitment, we still have schools under trees, kids that cannot afford the basic things like books or uniforms, and therefore they can't go to school? Some cross creeks or rivers to get to school. So does that come to you as a surprise?
No, not really, not really. I'm happy you even mentioned, touch on quite a number of areas. Now you realize before you get people into national security, the various sectors of the economy you mentioned, they must first go through the first one, which is education. You know, and so long as we have people being given birth to now and then, then the number of people required in the education sector would outweigh the number of people in some of the areas you mentioned, which are professional fields. You know, so as a nation, we have a task on hand to always brace the challenge of making sure that the newly born and then the younger generation have access to at least basic form of education. You know, so I'm not surprised we have those challenges. And needless to compare, if you go to Africa's second largest economy, that is South Africa, with the advent and rolling out of 21st century technology, there are still schools under trees. This is not the type of comparison we want to do. I just brought in this for us to see that if we have some challenges, they are not out of place. But we, as a nation, have to isolate ourselves and analyze our challenges and see how best we can address them. So I'm not too surprised about the schools under trees, especially when you look at the allocation into education sector. We seem to be having a paradigm shift. Where the paradigm shift basically means our focus and attention to education is increasing, as we had under the first president of this country. And therefore, the quantum of money that we inject into education is likely to increase going forward, whether we like it or not. And that is what we need. As I mentioned the other time, if you look at the model cases of Malaysia and Singapore, we cannot afford to, in a way, be parsimonious when it comes to the investment in education. We have to give our all. And the subsequent generation will be able to even streamline and turn around the limited resources to pay for the debt and even have excesses for future expansion in the country. So education, I'm not surprised we still have under trees, but gradually we'll get over it. It is not something we should be holding on to for the next 5 years or more. If you look at the level of infrastructure and investment we're envisaging, it is likely very soon we'll end it. Also, when the various new regions are created, what it means is that one region would have about 3 times, let me be very specific, northern region will have 3 times the existing facilities it has as a regional capital. It will be 3 times. And therefore, the opening or siting of schools by private investors in some areas will come in handy. So the efforts of government will be easily complemented by some of these expansions. Okay. And therefore, we need them. We need them. Because as we speak, northern region, it is the only region that stretches from the east, that is Togo, to the west, Ivory Coast. And yet, it is one region with one capital, with vast land untapped, undeveloped.
The BA shares the same status with it as
BA has half of it.
Okay.
BA has half. Okay. Northern region conquers all. You know, yes, BA comes closer, but the northern region, that is the only one. You know, and so if we want to accelerate development and then reduce or eliminate schools and the trades entirely, these are some of the initiatives we should be backing. Because if the government does not immediately do so, private investors will be attracted to set up or establish schools in the newly created regional capitals. You know, if you create regional capital, it means you must isolate the districts under that region and earmark them for development. And therefore, it will be easier for you to get rid of learning under trees. You know,
so it means the same quantum of consolidated fund that would have gone to only one, you know, maybe 20 districts within one region.
Or even take it from region to ease the explanation. That is, let me help you. It is true. Let's assume we have, as a nation, we have 20,000. We have $20 million to allocate to the 10 regions equally. Now, Greater Accra will get 2 million. Each one, Northern region will get 2 million. The same amount. Now, let's assume the amount has not increased. It's the same 20 million. But then you have Northern region having 2 additional regions.
So we have surplus money to spend on education and other sectors.
In that region. So now the number of regions will be 12. If you also strike the Brong-Ahafo to 2, then it will be 13. If you have the western coming into 2, then you have 14. So you divide the same 20 million among 14 regions instead of the regional 10. Okay. So it will reduce the amount that Greater Accra, Ashanti region, Volta region, Central region will get. But Western will now have an amount increased. The Northern will have the amount almost more than twice the original allocation. So there will be equitable distribution of the nation's resources to the various sectors of the country to accelerate development in the deprived areas.
Okay.
You know?
We are discussing the budget and education, or the budget vis-a-vis education. We are still on the Ghana Education Services basic school module and its effects. And the purpose of this show, as you know, is to exhaustively look at some of those challenges we have as a country and then proffer lasting solutions to them. You may keep your WhatsApp messages coming. And the number to send us your text messages to is 0558 656 And the good news is we'll use the same number when we open the phone lines. So for both WhatsApp and phone calls, you can reach us on 0558 656899. We'll soon compare the old and the new modules of education. But then I would like to ask you this. If the finance minister and government generally would allocate such a quantum of money to education, is it that the district directors of education are not doing enough? Is it that headmasters and headmistresses are not doing enough? Because we hear stories that, you know, resources that should go to basic schools are diverted onto the black market.
You don't want to be specific in mentioning names, right? Well, we've heard of this, but
yeah, because school feeding and some of the bags of maize and rice are diverted onto the black market instead of feeding basic school kids.
Yeah, the situation seems to be improving, and that is what we should be counting on.
Okay.
If it is improving, then we should actually hold it, and that would help us a great deal. For some time now, some of us have not been hearing about these challenges and developments, and we hope not hearing about them means we are improving for the better. Now, when it comes to education, in time past, the sector has lamented on the allocation of funds. The amount of money that is actually released by the government through the Ministry of Finance to the education sector. I remember even under the previous administration, there were some lamentations by the sector minister as to the amount of money that is released. And some of us had to conduct a brief research into technical vocational education and training in the country and realize the allocation made to the GES and subsequent sub-allocation by GES to technical and vocational education and training in the country was woefully inadequate. You know, so the education sector in time past has suffered some challenges. However, if we've come to the realization as a nation that we need to do the sector's bidding by making sure that the needed funds are allocated to ease training of professionals, future professionals, then why not? And so there have been challenges in the past, and the district directors, regional directors of education, and the others might hinge onto this particular shortfall to account to the people for their inability to deliver as expected. And that's why I was smiling. They may say the funds were not coming, and there were instances where there will be arrears. Some of the resources might not even come at all. You know, so if these challenges are addressed, then there is no room for excuse, and that is where we head into. So let's assume that in time past there were genuine challenges confronting the various regional and district directors of education. Fortunately, as a nation, we no longer leaving our researches on shelves, but then putting them into practice. If this is the case, then the necessary allocation in terms of funding is being made. So we should also expect delivery from these key stakeholders. So let us look at it from that angle. Let us assume that in time past there were genuine challenges. Now, are the challenges still persistent? That is a question that begs for an answer. And from the submission current from this year and going forward, you realize as we're trying to improve on the lot of the education sector. And the investment in the education sector should manifest in the eventual delivery that is bestowed on us by the key stakeholders in terms of the lectureship and teaching and whatever. Okay,
we'll shortly go for a break. But addressing Parliament last week, the Finance Minister, while reading out the budget, said, Mr. Speaker, as part of its drive to promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which has come to be known by the acronym STEM, STEM education across all levels, government will in 2019, Doc, please listen to this critically, roll out the B-STEM program in 7,000 basic schools across the country. When we come back, I'll ask you how effective is the teaching of science and technology at the basic level. We'll go for a quick commercial break. We'll be back shortly.
Onipa how ene ne da achenti e na abribia wo sori pre ehwehwe na hoto ne nso e ma prekope enkukuhwe ase ene wo how bebre ene wo mu wenti e na Kantanka TV ya hwehwe dwumadie foforo kra ya to din se edwasonsem wo dwasonsem dwumadie so ye baba pinadwadifo ne abusa wo mo how ene wo mama ne wo mo efa mu na empo se edaw bitai akira a wo de pre ahwehwe won da achen ahoto eno ti hia wo nua ba ama adwobi e wo Kantanka TV ne afa edwasonsem enfam bro.
Abodie mu no wonim say onyankopon ewo adoma odedo moman bia saa achedie niam eboa ma nipa nya ahoto ewo ne dada asetenam ensio emframa ye duane ye nua kwaye enhahama eni nro ahodo empo ya mamre eni ya mane saa niam niam nyankopon de ba oman bia se de mbeba emu nipa no enya ahoto enti na Kantanka television ahyehyɛ dwumadie sonko a yɛato no din sɛ yɛdiem ɛwɔ yɛdiem dwumadie so no na yɛkɔ Ghana mmea nyinaa ne yɛkɔ akɔfa nneɛma ahodoɔ a Onyankopɔn de adom yɛn ɛne mfasoɔ a yɛnya no wɔ so saa nso ne yɛbɛhwɛ ahobammɔ sonko a yɛde bɛma saa nneɛma yi yɛtumi ahwɛ so ye ɛde yɛgya hɔ ɛde ama nkyirima sɛ meka yɛdiem a na wagye so sɛ papapaa yɛdiem papapaa
Made in Ghana, ya yediem.
Ya yediem.
Yediem. Ome yenwanje yenyama o.
Ya yediem made in Ghana.
Ya yediem made in Ghana.
We are still in the studios with Dr. Ebenezer Ashley, an economist and a financial consultant. Your messages are trickling in. Keep them coming, 0558-656-899. And very soon, you'll get the opportunity to call on this very line. So 7,000, you know, we live in a country of bandying around figures. So how effective was the implementation of the budgetary allocation for basic education last year? In last year's budget, for us to hold this in confidently that we'll have 7,000 basic schools teaching maths and science and technology in a more effective way going into 2019.
Yes. Well, if you say we live in a country in which we relish our figures, that is the situation we find ourselves in. Yeah, actually, if you want to speak to the issue and come out with some or add clarity, they, to some extent, need some figures. Let me even cast our mind back to earlier conversation. You realize when I was talking about the allocation to the various regions, and if we should redistribute the regions, we may end up with about 14, with the same 20 million. Each region will end up with about $1.4 million. We're talking about the 20 million. Yes. So the Greater Accra share of 20 million will reduce to 1.4. All right, but the Northern will get 1.4 times 3. So you realize from 2 million, it will end up with about $4.2 million.
But Doc, I don't agree with you. Won't there be considerations based on how sparsely or densely populated the region is?
That's what I'm saying. Now I'm saying when we divide them, now you realize technically the one region will become 3 regions. So if you're making the same monetary allocation...
I'm saying you can't make the same allocation.
No, you will. No. I premise my argument on this, that you have 20 million.
Okay.
All right. And you are equally distributing this among the 10 regions, which in some cases...
Because I can tell you in confidence that the Upper East region, that is seen as largely sparsely populated, will not attract as much as the Greater Accra region would attract.
I'm even coming to that. The Greater Accra, the smallest region in Ghana, even attracts the chunk of the funds than all the regions, because it is the capital and there is a pressure on it to provide to meet the growing population. In most cases, its allocation tends to be high. All right, but that is the generality of it. But I'm looking at the presumptive measure where we have equal distribution. What will make the other regions beneficial will be if you are to divide them, so that they would increase their allocation technically, so that the level of development in that area will be accelerated. Now, having said that, if you look at the initiative of the government with regards to next year, which you have legitimate concern, which I'm sure viewers also want to hear of. Obviously, we have more than 7,000 basic schools in the country. What has been mentioned tells us that there may be some pilot scheme going on, because the
pilot for how long?
If I say pilot, where pilot basically means you do not have the resources. Now, let me conceptually define the pilot here. It is not to test the
waters. At this critical moment, we need piloting, Doc. Is that what you are saying?
No, you just ask if the allocation to the education ministry or sector in terms of funding is enough. And I have stated that in time past, it has not been enough. Now it is even nearing enough. So if you have certain objectives in mind and you want to roll them out to help the people, how would you go about it? Do you have the funds to kickstart it across the nook and cranny of the country? If no, then how do you still take it off? and let it start. Let people implement and see the outcome while you try to mobilize resources to spread to the untapped basic schools in the country. That's exactly what I mean by the pilot. It does not mean going to test the waters per se. It is kicking off in earnest, fine. But then not every school would have the benefit of this project at this point in time. That is exactly what I'm talking about. You know, so on the basis of this, some will start, and then others will have the opportunity to also come on board. And therefore, yes, the 7,000 is basically not enough, but it is a matter of having the financial wherewithal to take off across the various basic schools we have in the country. Now, if you look at it, it's also a technical, I would say, discipline that has been introduced. The science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This would obviously focus on certain key first cycle institutions in the country, and not necessarily across board. And we also need to, in as much as we will be interested in whipping up the academic sentiment and enthusiasm in everyone, you would have to first look at those schools that are either performing very well or underperforming, and then kickstart with them to bring them at par with those who are already performing. And this might have informed the selection of some schools at the expense of others to start with.
I don't know what goes into the preparation of a budget, but one key thing is that things worsen by the year in the educational sector. If today you have maybe 5,000 schools under trees,
Do you want to enroll your ward in a school that has keen interest in academic excellence and sound religious upbringing? Then Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences is the place. Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences, Great Assas, offers general arts, business, home economics, visual arts, general science and technical courses in auto mechanics and applied electricity. Great Assas has well-equipped laboratories for all the science-related courses, an ICT laboratory, and a well-stocked library. Excellent boarding facilities are available for both boys and girls with adequate security measures to ensure your ward's safety. Students also have the privilege to go to Apostle Safo Suaye at Gomu Ampota for practical lessons with the proprietor, Apostle Dr. Engineer Kwedo Safo, for 1 month during the long vacation. We also have a school bus that picks your ward from home to school and back home. Great Assas has a cadet corps, a choir, drama and debating club to harness the hidden talents in your ward. Locate Apostle Safo School of Arts and Sciences at Awoshila Stop, Accra, Ghana. Great Assas.
You're welcome back. We apologize for the technical challenge. You may join the conversation now by calling us on 055-865-6899. We are still discussing the budgetary allocation for education with specific reference to basic education. Doc, I'll ask you about how we can compare the current and the old models, especially at the basic level. But then who monitors our expenditure when a budget is read? If they say, okay, well, this year we expect that we are pumping this much to see this magnitude of change, who does the monitoring? Or we leave government to police its own self?
Thank you very much. This is
of course, the media does not have the resources to go check in every nook and cranny to see whether there has been effective implementation. So
thank you very much. Let me clarify this. Usually, every ministry prepares its budget, identifies number of projects, activities it intends to carry out in the coming year as a way of complementing the general government efforts of socio-economic development. Now, the projects are identified, the projects are quantified in monetary terms, and the total is submitted to the finance ministry. The finance ministry intends, reviews all the various ministry submissions, and then looks at the government's available funds in the coming year, and those that could be in a way carried out, those that could be afforded by the nation. So whenever a budget is read, as a matter of fact, not all intended projects of the nation are read. The budget covers those selected projects that the nation, through the government of the day and specifically the finance ministry, thinks could have funds to cater to. That is what happens. So when the finance ministry reviews the submission of the sector ministry and the allocation is made, those that are selected and confidently the country can finance in the coming year, they are those that are announced to the general public. That is what happens. So when it is announced, it does not also in most cases mean the funds are readily available. We could end this year with some amount of funds, but when we kickstart the following year, those outstanding balance will be used to commence projects in the following year. However, the full complement of budgeting and then financing will come from the trading activities that will take place in the following year. So if things do not go as expected, then certain releases in terms of funding are held back, are delayed. And that is why sometimes you hear quite a number of projects under a particular ministry, but we end the year and the ministry is still lamenting about its inability to carry through all. So the successful completion of all the identified programs and projects is contingent on the availability of funds. So that is what actually, it is the funding that sometimes holds back some of these activities. You know, so if we look at it from this particular angle, you realize, yes, the education sector would have submitted quite a number of activities and attendant costs to the sector, to the finance ministry. Some would have been accepted. Perhaps with the intervention of the president, you realize most of the education-led activities may be accepted because it forms the nucleus of our activities in the country as of now. And therefore, it will be easier for a chunk of the earmarked projects in the education sector to be rolled out and carried to their logical conclusion. So that is what actually happens. And in time past, it looks as if the focus on education has not been as strong as we are witnessing now. This is reminiscent of the first republic, obviously, and therefore we are on course as a nation, and God willing, things would work more than expected.
Yeah, and some people are curious. Now, basic education has been modernized, but do we still get the quality of output we used to get in the past? So how would you compare the two models?
Well, I'm sure when you talk about models, you're talking about two education systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at there's a sharp contrast here to a very large extent.
Okay.
The basic education and the old system, which used to be the primary, the elementary, and then the secondary, O-level, A-level, and university. If you look at it carefully, you realize the current system has truncated the number of years for the public system and also for the private system. But fortunately for the private system, there is only 1 year truncation. For the public, there are 5 years that have been cut short. Now, we also know that for most of the people that enroll in the public schools, these are people that come from somewhat difficult backgrounds, that find it difficult to effectively express themselves, especially in the English language. And therefore, the longer they stay, the better the likelihood of perfecting in the language before coming out of education. But as you cut it short, you worsen matters. That is the situation we find ourselves in. Now let's put, once again, we need numbers to appreciate what I mean by the truncation here. If you look at under the old system, we used to have class 1 to 6, and then you go for the common entrance. Let's even leave out the examinations. And then from 1 to 6, you also go to Form 1 to Form 4 before you go to secondary school Form 1. So by the time you go to secondary school Form 1, you would have spent 10 years in the basic form of education, sort of. Now you go to Form 1, Form 5, another 5 years, lower 6, upper 6, 2 years. So 7 years of education, 10 years of basic, so 17 years under the public system before you serve 1 year and enter the university. Under the old system, the private schools, you have stage 1 to 6, and then you go to secondary school, Form 1 to Form 5, and then lower 6, upper 6, which we call Form 6, Form 7. Jokingly, that's how we call it. You know, so you realize 6 years, and then you have another 7 years. So under the old system, the private school would have 13 years of secondary, basic and secondary education before 1 year of national service, and then enroll in the university.
So after high school in those times, you would do your national service?
Yes, you do the national service. After 6th form, you go to do the national service. And so that is why when you go to the university in those days, you do not see any parent there. The 1 year gives the student the necessary exposure. He or she is able to at least fend for him or herself. And if you see any parent on campus, then that parent is a student as well, but not attending to a ward.
Okay.
Yes, that is the difference. And now you realize under the current system, from class 1 to 6, you have JHS 1 to 3, and then SHS 1 to 3. So from 6 years, you add another 6 years, that is 12 years under the new system for the public schools. So you realize from 17, it is now 12 years, 5 years taken off. Let's look at the private institutions. From stage 1 to 6, you go to JHS 1 through 3, SHS 1 through 3. So that will be 6 years and 6 years. So that will be 12 years compared with 13 years. So the private system has only 1 year taken off. And that reflects in the overall performance of these two groups of students. Before you enter the university, the public has 5 years off, the private just 1 year off, and you could tell that if you look at the overall performance of students at the JHS, SHS, most of them are those who went through the private system of education. You know, so the current one is actually not doing as much good, and therefore the findings by the World Bank's group on Human Capital Index, which places Ghana on 116th out of 157 countries, and also indicating that in the next 18 years, only 44% of our produce will be good for socio-economic development. 56% will be waste due to the current system of education we have. It's not surprising to some of us.
Okay.
You know, so this is why now this is the challenge. Not necessarily going back into the old days of even up to Form 4.
Yes, sir.
But these are some of the reasons why there is a disparity. You realize most of the people that enroll in the...
Doc, hold on a bit. We invite Abena Safo, and she will help us with some of the text messages. Yes. So, Doc, so where do we stand? The world is moving on anyway.
Yes.
So should we continue to be nostalgic about the past, or we can only do a little tweak so that we can keep up with the Joneses, so to speak?
Now, the system of education we have now, it is not a matter of nostalgia. It's a matter of comparative analysis to see the various forms of education system you have implemented. Which one is the best? That is what matters. And as an individual, sometimes we do retroactive and self-introspection to see which areas are not working well for us, and we change for the better. That is what is happening here.
Okay.
You realize clearly that the current system of education, it's from all the findings, is adding more to cost than benefit to the nation.
Okay.
That is what it means. And therefore, we have to take a second look at it to help us move on. Now, if you also consider this, if you look at awards that enrolled in school now, especially those from 1 month to 10 years, who are the firstborns of their parents, they may not be having much challenges with their studies, because most of these parents will be people in their 30s and at most early 40s. All right, and these people might have had the opportunity to taste education up to some level, and therefore they are in a better position to help their wards with homeworks and assignments. But if the 10-year-olds and above are the second, third, and fourth borns, then their parents are likely to be in their 50s, some in the early 60s, who might find it difficult to help because they might have not had the opportunity to access education.
That's quite a valid point. Abena, what do you have for us by way of text message?
Okay, we've received some comments today. Good show. I applaud the area of discussion. Amina from UDS sent in this one. I wish the government can invest more on technical and vocational education instead of read and write programs. Salifu from Medina sent in this one. Government should build more technical and vocational facilities to help industries to grow more in the country. Ernest from Cantonment sent in this one. Good show, Kantanka TV. I pray the appropriate authorities support you for sustainability. This one is from Cynthia. That's all our social media comments for today, and we do appreciate all of your comments. So I'll give the rest to everybody to sum up.
In closing, you heard the responses, vocational, technical education, even though our focus is on basic education. In closing, in closing, what are some of the recommendations you would make? The budget has been read. What else after that? How do we get education going in a much, much better way?
Yes, the education system as we have in general would require not a mere reform, it has to be in a way repositioned. We just oppose this with the system that we in a way left and embraced this particular one and see which one is helping us as a nation effectively. You know, the English language is something we learn. It is not something that is bequeathed to us at birth. And therefore, it may take a while for some people to come to terms with its technicalities. And we must appreciate this and know that we require some amount of time to effectively go through the system of education that we're looking for. The clamor for a common language as a national language in terms of our local language might not be too necessary. Given that we have over 20 different languages and over 50 dialects, you know, it will be difficult to cling on to one. However, we can maintain the English as the national language, but make it possible for people to learn the native languages too, as we do, the Ga, the Twi, the Dagari, the Ewe, and others. We should have them alongside the English language. This will help us a great deal. And when we do this, we'll be able to move on significantly. With regards to the comment sent in, fortunately, the technical and vocational education and training is receiving strong attention. Some of us mentioned this, which the government is also aware of that.
We have less than a minute to do.
The success of the One District, One Factory would be pivoted around effective and strong technical and vocational education institutions in the country, and therefore we need to pay more attention to this particular area.
Thank you so much. All too soon, we've come to the end of another edition of News Magazine, and we had in the studios Dr. Ebenezer Ashley. He's an economist and a financial consultant, and discuss the budget vis-a-vis education. Doc, thank you so much for making time.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so we come your way on Wednesday with another edition of News Magazine. Stay blessed and keep watching Kantanka TV. Do take care. Bye-bye.